Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'll be ranking every club's GOAT player. This list is very subjective. I feel like you can argue with not only the position of each club I rank, but also like what player I include. I think there's quite a few times where it's quite a contentious pick, so I'll try and mention some honourable mentions. But at the end of the day, I am right. No, but seriously, if you do disagree, please get in the comments. It really helps boost the video. So I actually might say something controversial just to get some more hits. Also, just to clarify a few things before we start, this is me ranking the player at this club. So like there'll be better players I could have chosen for certain clubs, but I'll be ranking at the time with said club, if that makes sense. So like I won't be choosing Frank Lampard for West Ham because he only played like 2 years there, even though he probably would be their best player who's ever played for the club. If you get me. Yeah, to kick us off, we've got Luton Town. No big surprise. At time of recording, they've only ever played one game because they couldn't play the second game because their pitch was too. So that being said, with one game to choose from, I'm going Carlton Morris as our greatest of all time Premier League player. He scored their first ever goal in the Premier League, so we'll go down in history for that. And I do think he can get like up to around the 10 goal mark. I don't think he'll reach 10 goals, maybe around like 8. And that would be a good season for him. And I think he's like their one real bit of quality, along with Kabori at right wing back, who I actually really like. I really wanted Forest to sign him back in the day, last year. Wasn't that long ago. But yeah, no, I'm rooting for Luton. I want Luton to do well, and maybe a hero will emerge this season, and he'll be the greatest of all time. Second last place, we've got Sheffield United. We're stepping up a bit in quality now because they've had numerous stints in Premier League. I believe this is their third now. But I wanted to choose a player who featured in that 2019-2020 campaign where they finished 9th, which is still an incredible achievement. And from that bunch, I was kind of torn between 3 players mainly, John Fleck, John Lundstrom and Dean Henderson. I realised I couldn't really choose Dean Henderson because he was a loan, and I thought that would be a bit of a slap in the face if your greatest all-time player was a lone player. And John Lundstrom, he's FPL royalty. I remember that season, he was like minimum, wasn't he? Like 4 mil, and he got like 8 goal involvements, like bargain player that year. But I actually want to go John Fleck, because although John Lundstrom's goals are really important in a team that didn't actually score that many goals, John Fleck was just a player that year. Like he was spraying the ball around like Pirlo. And also, like, I want to choose a player who's still at the club because he has the longevity with Sheffield United. He's come back up with them, and I'm sure this season he's actually going to have an alright one. Especially now Sander Berger's left. And to complete the relegation zone, we've got Bournemouth. And I feel like Bournemouth are a bit hard done by here because they had numerous years and they were quite good. But they were kind of, again, they're one of those teams which is like greater sum of the... What is it? Their sum is the greater of the whole part. You know what I'm trying to say. They are greater than the sum of their parts. That's the expression. And so it's hard to choose a player. I had 2 though. I had 2 good names. The first one who just missed out was Lewis Cook, who I think people forgot how good he was in that Bournemouth team. I think he got England called up. A lot of people saying he should have played more games for England. And he kind of defined that possession-based attacking football that Bournemouth was so good at. Under those years with Eddie Howe. But I've gone for Nathan Ake because he was the best player in that Bournemouth team that were good. And he's gone on to Man City. I'm not counting that. And everyone can see he's a good player. Like, he's a great player. And he stopped that team from, conceding over 100 goals. Because they conceded a lot of goals even when they were good. Just surviving the drop here, I've got Burnley. And I was trying to think of a player who kind of defined that Sean Dyche Burnley team. I was very close to going with Ben Mee because he was, he absolutely epitomised everything it meant to play Dyche ball. Getting in the way of every shot, just hoofing it when you get it, and he was a great player and a great servant to the club. Although I don't think he was the best player because whenever another team came in for a Burnley defender, which they often did because they were a good defensive team, it would be the other one they chose. It would be like Michael Keane or Tarkowski. With history, we have looked back and kind of said like, yeah, Ben Mee actually might have been the best out of any of the Burnley defenders. Which is why I go for Nick Pope, because Nick Pope turned that good defensive side into an amazing defensive side. Because if they did get a shot on target and they got through like the 8 players in the way, he would save it a lot more than others. He had an unreal save percentage at Burnley. Maybe inflated a bit because a lot of them are long shots, but we've seen he's a great player now. And he kept Burnley up for many years. Also, a bit of shout out to Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood. You know, they were great together up front. Team which some people might be surprised to find them slow down, but I think we've got another Bournemouth situation, and it's Brighton. Because, well, it's not even actually exactly like Bournemouth. I think what happens with Brighton is they'll get two standout players like every year who come out of nowhere for that year, and then they sell them for like 80 mil. So it's hard to say who's been the best over this long period of time now, which Brighton have been good. So I've decided to pick the player who's been there through it all. And he's probably one of the most underrated players in the league right now and over the course of the last 10 years, and that is Lewis Dunk. He's not only excelled under De Zerbi and Potter playing expansive, football, playing out from the back, but he also was really good in that Chris Hughton side, which managed to stay up like 2 years back to back, when they were kind of like Burnley has, just sit back and hope we don't concede. Like Lewis Dunk, absolutely love. I think he can do it all. He can defend. He can attack. He should be playing for England, to be honest. He should have played in at least one of the last two tournaments. Next, I've got Wolverhampton Wanderers. I still haven't actually done like an old name yet. Like my ball knowledge will come up in a bit, but a lot of the bottom of these teams are quite recent players because they haven't played that much in the Prem. And I'm going to go Ruben Neves to Wolves. I think it's quite an obvious one for Wolves, right? He's clearly Mr. Wolverhampton Wanderers. I guess the only thing you can argue about his position on the list, I think you can make an argument for him being lower or higher once you see the names ahead of him. But Wolves were good. Like Wolves got 8th place finish, wasn't it, with that one year? Like under Nuno, they were constantly a top 10 side immediately from being promoted. And that's mainly down to that midfield of Ruben Neves and João Moutinho, who deserves an honourable mention. But, he could defend, he could spray the ball like no one else. And even in recent years, when Wolves are looked a bit limited going forward, he always seems special. Like, if he gets the ball 25 yards out, he can score a goal from nothing. And I think it's such a shame that we're not going to see him in his prime in the Prem and he'll be playing somewhere else. Hopefully, he'll come back, on a free, maybe when he's 30 to West Ham, something. Something more progressive than that. In 14th, we've got my favourite team, Nottingham Forest. And this was a hard one because I feel like Forest, we actually had quite a few players in the 90s that went on to excel at other clubs. Like Roy Keane, we had a young Roy Keane people forget about. Teddy Sheringham, who actually, he was excellent in the year before the Premier League. So you could go over a modern one with Morgan Gibbs White or something. But no, I think it's Stan Collymore. He was excellent in a side which wasn't very good in the 90s, just managing to stay up. And as soon as he left, we went down. But he got, I think, around the 24 goal mark in one season. He was excellent. And I feel like Stan Collymore, we don't actually even talk about him much anymore. But I remember growing up and on Sky Sports, he used to have Premier League through the years programmes. I remember him popping up in loads of them, like that Newcastle game, when they lose and I think he scores the last minute winner. Yeah, great player. My dad's favourite Forest player as well. Next, we've got a pick which might be seen as quite a controversial one from children, and it's for Crystal Palace because I feel like at first everyone's going to be saying Wilfried Zaha, but no, there was a player who was much better for them, and his name was Andrew Johnson. Anyone who knows football knows Andrew Johnson was a baller. He had that one season where I think it was 28 goals or something, a very average Palace side. But people always write him up as a one-season wonder. He got above 20 the season after, and then almost 20 the season after that. He was a bit of a penalty-taking merchant, but he was still an excellent player. And he could have got even more goals playing for a better side. Probably not. He's probably one of the players who was good where he was. Honestly, Premier League baller. Let's not forget about Andrew Johnson. Right, Brentford. It's Ivan Toney. I guess where the argument lies is, how high should Ivan Toney be? I think Ivan Toney is not just an amazing goal scorer, but all-round amazing player. And I think he's not even big 6 kind of level. I think he's big 4 level. He should be playing Champions League football. And it's a real shame we won't get to see him play really this year because, he put a bet on a game. Who cares? Amazing player. And when he comes back from his ban, I think his standing in the Premier League history is only going to go up. And I think after a whole career, I think he could be in the top 10. Everton. And Everton's a weird one because for a club as big as them, they haven't had that many Premier League ballers, if you know what I mean. They're kind of a, first division merchant, as I would call them. But they still have quite a few players to choose from, and I'm going to go just for my favourite. And I feel like we don't talk about him enough anymore, but that's Leighton Baines. It's mad that left back's on like the greatest of all time list, but he was actually that good. Like, he would get so many assists from a set piece delivery. Like, step aside James Ward-Prowse. Like, he's actually the first player on the list who was the best player in their position when he played for a certain amount of years. Because Leighton Baines, he was the best left back from that period after Ashley Cole left his prime and before. Well, we had a real dearth of quality left back until like Andrew Robertson. But let's not forget Leighton Baines. Yeah, watch his highlight compilation and you'll see what a wand of a left foot that boy had. They couldn't quite do it last season, but Fulham have broken into the top half here with Edwin van der Sar. Probably my favourite Premier League goalkeeper of all time. I don't know why, something about him just screams vintage Premier League. Obviously he goes to Man United, wins loads of titles, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about Fulham, who were an average side in the 2000s. Average to good, to be fair. They were pushing Europe for quite a few years. But in that 3-year spell he's at Fulham, he's also like the Netherlands starting keeper. He's probably the best keeper in the league at that time. Maybe, I forget when Petr Cech joins. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. But he is just a Premier League player, isn't he? He's the kind of guy you want to be seeing in those Sky Sports like montages before the game on Monday Night Football. He's just an absolute legend, and I'm not even using stats or anything to back him up. It's just Edwin van der Sar. He's like a Premier League legend. A little shout out to Clint Dempsey, by the way. Underrated US baller. Alright, we've got West Ham at 9th, which I feel like this is the kind of right place to have West Ham. Like, before I drew this up, I was like, this is where I think the club deserves to be. And I'm going Paulo Di Canio. Like, we're starting to get into like legend realm now. Like Premier League legend, and he was absolute baller. I feel like there's an argument for Declan Rice. Maybe Declan Rice would be more effective. I don't even know if that's true, but he just... I feel like Paulo Di Canio for West Ham, when they were quite a middling club, he would be the reason he would get your fans excited, you know? If I was supporting a club who was like getting like 14 consistently, like I kind of am actually, Nottingham Forest, but there's not much to play for each year. Like, what gets you excited to go to each game? And it is Paulo Di Canio kind of player. I presume everyone's seen his goal, the one where he like volleys it mid-air, but he was technically way too good for West Ham. And that is not a slight in West Ham. It's kind of a compliment to your greatest ever player. He was unreal. And he just, again, like Edwin van der Sar, he just screams Premier League. Alright, next we've got Aston Villa. And there is not Jack Grealish. Instead, we're throwing it back all the way to Paul McGrath. This guy does not get talked enough by anyone who's not an Aston Villa fan. People always forget that Aston Villa almost win the title in the first ever season of the Premier League rebranding. If it isn't for a last-minute winner by Man United, Aston Villa would have been known as the first team that won the Premier League, and Paul McGrath would have been known as the best player on that team. He comes away with the PFA Player of the Year that season, and he's probably Ireland's best ever player. A lot of people consider him as. He's an absolute brick wall at the back. He was everything what a centre-back needed to be in the 80s and 90s. He would be high on the list if he did more of his playing career in the Premier League. He did most of it in the First Division, a lot for Man United as well. He's only unlucky by what age he enters the rebranding for not be higher. He could have been a Premier League centre-back GOAT if he played more in it. Alright, next up we've got Tottenham Hotspur. We've got the first of the big six, and it's Harry Kane, right? Yeah, Harry Kane's Tottenham's greatest ever player. You know, second top goal scorer in the Premier League. There's not much more to say. I mean, there is actually. No, I'm taking that back. Because on ability, I feel like Harry Kane could... There's an argument for Harry Kane to be moved up higher. I feel like it's only in the last year or two. It's really only ever since Haaland has joined, everyone started now rightly praising Harry Kane. When Harry Kane was the best striker in the league, everyone wanted to like complain about him. But it's always the best player in the league. The best player in the league, people are overly critical of. And then a few years go by, and then we look back and like, oh yeah, Harry Kane, absolute baller. Because it's not just his goals, his passing's amazing, but he's just missing that Premier League title for me to be able to justify him going higher. Alright, next up we've got Liverpool, and this may be my most controversial pick of the whole video, because I've not gone with Steven Gerrard. You can argue all you want, but I think in the Premier League, As Premier League GOAT member, Salah has been better. You know, Salah, since he joined Liverpool, his lowest amount of goals and assists has been 27. 27 goals and assists are a bad season by the standards he set. Those ridiculous numbers. He has been in at least 2 seasons he's been in the Premier Liverpool, being the best player in the league. And again, I think it's quite fashionable to hate on Salah, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just some people don't like his personality. Maybe it's because Liverpool fans, people just don't like them. I think he's argument for being top 5 of all time in the Prem. Maybe not, but I mean, there's an argument. I think you can make the argument. He's definitely top 10, and probably the best right winger who's ever played in the Prem, in my opinion. But I guess again, the argument I've got to make is like, why Salah over Gerrard? And Gerrard, again, he's Mr. Liverpool, but he never wins the league. And I was thinking when I instinctively put Gerrard in originally and had him over Harry Kane, I was like, what actually is the justification for Gerrard being over Harry Kane? Like, he probably is a better player overall because he can play like any position on the pitch and be a great player. But I feel like it would be a closer argument in terms of Premier League than people would think. And Salah doesn't have that argument. Like, he's the best player on the best team in the league. Gerrard was the best player on a good side in the league, and I feel like his slip just hurts him with his legacy within the Premier League. Still an all-time great though. Champions, like, won multiple cups for Liverpool, especially that Champions League, which is probably one of the most special moments ever in football. So, sorry, Stevie. Somehow missing out on the top 4. I've got Man City. I found it so much harder once I got to the top end of these players, because we're starting to get to the point now where each club has had many like great players, and it's you're not just ranking against one, you rank against it's been hard. Okay, I thought before I started the video I would have De Bruyne and Man City within the top 4. First of all, let me justify De Bruyne as Man City's best player. I think the other players in the discussion are like Vincent Kompany, like Yaya Toure, David Silva, Sergio Aguero. But there's something about De Bruyne I've seen him play. He's the one Man City player I've seen who do stuff consistently, which I'm like, I don't think any other player on the planet, and very few in history of football, could pull that off. But I feel like because he's actually always been surrounded by so many great players, it kind of hurts him a bit. He often goes out injured, and Man City still win. They win a little bit less, but they still win a lot. So it's hard to fully... I think he's one of those players that once he retires, people will start consistently ranking him like above maybe like your Lampards, maybe your Gerrards. Speaking of which, at number 4 I've got Chelsea with Frank Lampard. Again, it was between him and De Bruyne. I went back and forth, but I could not... You can't look past Frank Lampard's pure output in the Premier League. Like, the score... Was it 10 consecutive seasons with 10 plus goals in midfield? And this is not like a number 10. A lot of this is 4-4-2. I mean, they played him 3 a lot of time with Jose Mourinho, but he was never a 10. He was always a box-to-box. And have that kind of output is unbelievable. He gets top 3 in Ballon d'Or one year. And with the Frank Lampard-Gerrard debate, I think Gerrard might pip it overall, but in the Premier League, I think Lampard is a Premier League hero. A lot of honourable mentions to a lot of Chelsea players, obviously, like your John Terrys, your Didier Drogba's, your Zola's, Eden Hazard. Obviously, I've had some good players. It's Chelsea. Alright, number 3. We've got Newcastle. Maybe where they'll finish this year. Like, who knows? Sky's the limit for them at the moment. But yeah, and of course, we've got Demba Ba. Like, Demba Ba's... Yeah, we've got Alan Shearer. I actually originally had Alan Shearer a lot lower down. And then I started doing some thinking and then really looked at his stats. And they're unbelievable. To get over 30 goals, I think it was 4 times in his career, maybe 3 times. To do that, win in Premier League with Blackburn, who, they were good that year, but they weren't overwhelming favourites or nothing. And I feel like it's a shame almost with Alan Shearer because of 2 things. Because if injuries didn't actually derail him a lot, which kind of limited his goal output a little bit in the later years, and him choosing Newcastle, which is a completely respectable decision, but not going to Man United, because he could have had 8 Premier League trophies under his belt, being the best player in that team, and then I think he would be the undisputed best player in the league. In second place, just missing out on the league title, I've got Man United. This was a really hard one because obviously Man United have had countless amazing Premier League players. I could have gone for like a class of 92 player, like a Beckham, a Scholes, a Giggs. Or then there's the obvious of Wayne Rooney, who's like, Mr. Man United. But I've gone with Cristiano Ronaldo because those 3 years before he joins Real Madrid, he's the most exciting player in the Premier League. Like, he's box office. Like, not just his output when he gets like 32 goals 1 year, but just his dribbling, which I think he loses late in his career, like all the tricks he does. But people, like even non-Man United fans, which are a lot of people hate United, would still be excited to watch him because of how exciting Cristiano Ronaldo was. And Wayne Rooney only misses out for me because I feel like he's often, in a lot of Premier League, in a lot of Man United squads where they win, I feel like you can argue he's second fiddle. And especially in the Ronaldo case. That's no disrespect to Wayne Rooney, like third top goal scorer in the league of all time. No, he was a machine as well. But Cristiano Ronaldo, it's just him, right? And here we go, the Premier League champions, doing what they couldn't do last year. We've got Arsenal. Again, another club with so many great players, so many great teams. I'll shout out Vieira, Perez, Bergkamp, Bangiyang. I don't know why I'm playing. Oh, Bangiyang, good player. Good player. Not quite great all the time, but no, it's congratulations. It's Thierry Henry. What a phenom Thierry Henry was in the Premier League. I don't think we've ever seen someone with such like blistering pace who's also effective with it. Like, imagine if like Dan James was a good football player. Imagine if Dan James had Thierry Henry's skill. That would be Thierry Henry. Oh, that's an awful metaphor. He has a season where he gets 20 goals and 20 assists. Is unheard of. Like, he played in that Invincibles team, which I know a lot of people say a bit overrated, which I think is true to an extent, but I feel like you don't even need to use stats to back up about how good Thierry Henry was over a long period of time in the Premier League. Yeah, congratulations, Thierry. You are the Premier League GOAT, according to me, which means it's true. Alright, thank you for watching, guys. If there's anything I missed on any players, I feel like I've got to miss one obvious player somewhere. I've not given a mention to at least. Please let me know. I'm genuinely quite curious. I think this is a really hard list to do because there's been quite a few players in the Premier League. But if you liked it, please drop a like, drop a subscribe if you want some more, and hopefully I'll see you soon.